Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of As the Crow Flies Hiking. I would like to talk to you about backpacking basics. What are some of the basic things about backpacking as people get started? Well, to me, it all starts with a backpack. And that is what I'm doing tonight. I've got a trip going tomorrow, and so I thought I'd sit down and talk about the trip in a fashion that deals with how you pack your backpack, the things that you need to go on a backpacking trip. This is just an overnight, so I'm going to take you along. First, we'll start here and talk about the things that are in the backpack and the essentials of backpacking from a planning standpoint and the items that are essential to every trip. And then I'll take you out on the trip and we'll go out on the trail and look at some of the basic things as we go along the trail. So we start with a backpack. What are some of the things that I essentially have in this backpack that keep me moving along the trip without worrying about getting hurt and having all the gear that I need? First, the backpack itself. I'm using a Dyneema backpack, but there are all kinds of backpack, all kinds of materials that people use for backpacking. You don't have to have a Dyneema backpack. You don't have to have any of the expensive items that people talk about in all the backpacking videos. If you want to go to Walmart, you can find a backpack, a sleeping bag, a shelter, anything that you need for a backpacking trip. Some people get started there. Over the years, maybe 20 years or so of backpacking, I have evolved my kit and my process, and now I'm using a Hyperlite Mountain Gear backpack. This is a 65-liter backpack, but some people use a 40-liter backpack, a 35-liter backpack, a 55, anywhere in between. It's all up to you and what you want your adventure to be. So first, for me, it's a backpack. You want it to be comfortable. You want it to carry the items that you want to have in your backpack, and you want it to have all the essentials in here that you need. People pack their backpack very differently. Some people have weight on the bottom, weight on the top, weight in the middle. It's all your preference. For me, I like to have my shelter and my sleeping bag on the bottom. I can tell you there's a lot of opinions about which place each item should be in your backpack. This is just simply the way I do it, and I don't mean to say that this is the best way or the only way. On top, I usually have my ditty bag or bag of different things that I carry along with me. In this particular trip, I've got some hand warmers. I've got a little bag of essentials, things like an extra headlamp, an extra sports bottle top for my water bottle, some batteries for this headlamp, kinetics tape that I use in case I have some sort of thing that I need to be taped up or just use for an injury of some kind. I got an extra rubber band in here and some shoelaces. I always carry shoelaces in my ditty bag. I also have another Ziploc bag, and inside this Ziploc bag, I have my medical kit. It's just a small Dyneema bag that I got from Light AF. It has pretty much all the essentials that I need, or at least I think I need. I won't go into the details of it, but that's where I keep all my Neosporin and other items that you would need just for some sort of minor injuries. If it's a major injury, I'm probably going to have to call somebody, but this is what I have in here, Band-Aids and all those types of things. I also have a toiletry bag, and I just use a small Ziploc bag, but you can do it however you want to. But I have things like my medicine and toothpaste and toothbrush, dental floss, eye drops, and extra contacts if I need it in there. Also in this bag, I have a fire billow so that I can blow into a fire if I need to get oxygen underneath. So essentially that is my ditty bag, and that's what I use to keep all my little things that don't fit into anything else. A lot of people have a ditty bag or call it different things. It's just a bag that I use and I keep on top that has all these extra things that are small and kind of come together in this little kit. Also on top, I have my food bag. Now this is a Hilltop Packs food bag. It's one of the first ones they made. I got it years ago and it's lasted great for me, but it's a Dyneema bag that rolls down. It also has a bear bag line in it that I use to put up in a tree, but I also have my food in there. So this is an overnight trip, a real short trip. So I'm just taking a Peak Food beef pasta marinara that I use on the trail, and then I have a breakfast, a lunch, and snacks that I'll have on the trail. Also in my food bag, I happen to put my cook kit. In my cook kit, I have a bag that has all my essentials of cooking. That is, it has a lighter, my little stove, a towel that I use to clean stuff with, some hand sanitizer, a small spoon. I have 2 spoons, and I keep a small spoon in here just in case I lose my spoon. Also inside this little bag that fits inside my food bag is my Totes 550 milliliter cup that I use for boiling water. Essentially, when I'm doing a smaller trip, I typically just boil water for a Mountain House meal or a Peak meal or some meal like that. So that's really all I need. Inside here is my small Isopro canister that I have for fuel and a stabilizer for the bottom of it so that it will stay on solid ground. And this is just a rubber band that keeps it all together. Also in my food bag is my bear line. This is a line that I use to throw over the tree and hoist this food bag up so it stays up in the tree. Also in here is my titanium spoon. It is a long spoon for Mountain House meals and things like that, so it can really go into the bag itself and I don't get all the food on me. So essentially, that is my food bag and what I carry there. The next item that I have on the top of my pack is a Sea to Summit bag. This has my puffy jacket in it. I don't have it cinched down very tight here, but my puffy jacket usually goes with me. The temperatures are going down in the 20s, so I'm carrying a heavy puffy jacket for this trip. But I usually like to have some sort of insulation, a puffy jacket or some kind of jacket. If you're going down to lower temperatures, make sure that you carry some kind of insulation, down or synthetic, something to carry on your core to keep your temperature up so that you don't get into hypothermia and issues like that. The next item I'll talk about that continues to be on the top part of my pack is my rain jacket. I just have a typical Mountain Hardwear, I think, rain jacket that I use. All of these rain jackets, to me, no matter which brand I have, no matter how high the quality, to me, they all seem to sweat through at times. So you've got to look for one that's fairly breathable, and this one seems to be, because the temperatures are going low on this trip and because there's a high chance of rain on the second day. I'm carrying a rain jacket. Along with another item that I have, that is the small 6 Moon design. They make them in different brands. This little umbrella that's lightweight. It's carbon fiber, so it's super lightweight, fits on the side of my pack. I pretty much go on every trip with this thing, and it always has that comforting feeling, just a morale booster when the rain's not hitting me in the face, to have this little umbrella. The next item that I'll talk about is my Neo Air X-Lite. This is a sleeping pad that has a 4.5, I believe, I'll have to look that up, temperature rating. So it keeps the heat in the pad for you and keeps the heat from getting away from you, underneath your sleeping bag or your quilt. I love this little pad. It's super light, maybe 11 ounces, I think, but it is a 20-inch pad. There's all sorts of ideas and opinions about pads, thicker, lighter, no pad. Having them that are insulated like this, I think, is essential, especially when the temperatures are going down as they are for me on this trip. But I think it's essential if you're a ground dweller to have some sort of sleeping pad. Now, I'm not talking about hammocks, but other people have a stronger opinion for hammocks than they use every time. And so then you have to talk about insulation underneath the hammock. For me, being in a tent, I'm simply using a sleeping pad that goes underneath my quilt or sleeping bag, and that way I can have it and keep myself warm throughout the night. The next item that I'll show you is my Z-Packs Duplex. It is a 2-person tent. It's Dyneema. Obviously, over the years, I've evolved into this tent because I wanted the lightest one possible. This one is around 19 ounces, so it is super light. Sometimes a little bit bulky, I feel like. I've looked at maybe a 1-person tent, maybe the Altaplex by Z-Packs, or 6 Moons Designs has the Lunar Solo. That's a good tent. But there's all kinds of tents out there on the market. I'm not recommending a tent to anybody. That is up to you to figure out what tent that you want and what you feel like is fits your needs in your situation. But for me, I use a Dyneema tent because it's super light. It does not absorb the water, and so it really works well for me. In this bag, I have another essential for backpacking, and this particular quilt that I have sits on the bottom of my pack. But this is in a dry bag. It compresses down a lot further. This is a 0-degree bag, a quilt that I use. Whatever you do out in the backpacking world, you've got to have insulation at night. This happens to be a down quilt. Some people use sleeping bags, some people use other things, but a quilt or a down bag or a synthetic bag is essential for backpacking, especially since, as I said, I'm going down to the 20s, and so I need something to keep me warm at night. I will say that most of the items that I just talked about, they remain in a Nylaflume bag. This little bag is waterproof, and it's essentially feels like a balloon type bag, but it fits the entire portion of my pack. Even though this HMG pack is highly water resistant, it's still, I feel more comfortable that all the things that I really need, like my shelter and especially my quilt, that I want it to be water resistant. This just gives me that peace of mind. I've talked about all the items that are on the inside of my pack. Now I want to talk about essential items for backpacking that are on the outside of my pack. In this bag that sits on the outside kind of water bottle holder area of my backpack, I have my tent poles and I have my stakes. I happen to keep my stakes in a small Hilltop Packs little bag, but I carry titanium stakes that are the shepherd hooks. There's all sorts of opinions about what types of stakes to use. These are just the ones that I've chosen. I don't think that they're any better or any worse than any others. This is what I choose. And for my tent, it is a trekking pole tent. Z-Packs makes these carbon fiber poles, so I use these instead of trekking poles. Now, I could go into a long rabbit hole about whether you should use trekking poles or not as essentials for backpacking. I'm not going to get into that. I think that they are wonderful items to use, trekking poles. I happen to not use them because I film a lot out on the trail and they just get in my way. But I do think that they help out a lot for your joints and for motion and help you keep some of the load and weight off as you go. On the other side of my pack, I have a water bottle. I just use a smart water bottle type. This is Essentia. It's a little bit thicker plastic, so that's why I like it. But I usually keep electrolytes in my water, and so that's why it has the red coloring to it. When you're talking about essentials of backpacking, you've got to have hydration. And so for me, it depends on the trip, but I'm usually going to have 1 to 2, usually 1.5 liters of water on the trip. That's where I pretty much go into 1.5 liters, sometimes just 1 liter. It depends, but I like to have 1 liter because as long as I have my water filter, then I feel like if I can make it from point to point, I can fill up my water bottle and 1 liter is enough. Because when you talk about water, you're talking about weight. This probably, I don't remember the mathematical equation, but I think it's 2 pounds for this liter of water. So the more water you carry, the more weight you're adding to your backpack weight. Another item on the outside of my pack is my water filter kit. I use an old sleeping bag pad pouch, but I carry all my essentials of filtering of water. Inside this kit, I carry a CNOC bag or Canuck bag, and this Canuck bag essentially is how I dip into the stream. Take this piece off and dip into the stream and get all my water for there, and then I filter through a Sawyer squeeze. I have the regular Sawyer squeeze. I've tried the other ones, and I'm sure there's all kinds of opinions about which one to use. There's all kinds of water filters on the market. There's been a lot of great designs that have come out on these water filters, but I simply have enjoyed using the Sawyer squeeze, the regular one. Also in the outside of my pack is my Hilltop Packs, what I use as my trowel kit or poop kit. I have my trowel in here. I have wipes and toilet paper and usually some sort of hand sanitizer in this bag. But that's everything essential that I need for going to the restroom in the woods. And I think that's essential. You should practice leave no trace principles, including digging a cat hole as advised on particular websites and how to do it. I won't go into that, but you should dig a cat hole and use the proper procedures and policies for whatever public land that you're in as it's required. Some lands require a wag bag to take bags in, to take waste out. But for me around the Southeast, typically this is what I need: a trowel and toilet paper, usually biodegradable paper, but it's essential to have this on any backpacking trip. Two more things on the outside of my pack that I'll talk about is I do have a pack cover. Now you may say I'm a little neurotic because I've got that Nylaflume inside. I've got a water resistant pack, highly water resistant, and I also have a pack cover. Yes, I'm a little neurotic when it comes to water getting in my pack, but this thing weighs nothing. And so I keep it here on the outside of my pack, especially on a trip like this, because weather in backpacking essentials is important to make sure that everything stays dry that has to stay dry. Lastly, I carry a pillow. A lot of people don't carry a pillow, especially ultralight people that are dealing in grams and keeping their weight down. But I carry a Trekology Aluft pillow. It's simply a blow-up pillow that I use to keep my neck and head off of the ground so that I don't wake up in the morning with a sore neck and everything else, and that I sleep well. On the back of my pack, you can see I have a little small pocket here. In here, I usually keep my headlamp and just essentials like snacks in this little thing that I use for the day so that I can get to them without opening my pack. On the other side, I have a pack towel. This thing is used to keep sweat off. Won't have that problem much this trip because it's going to be cold. But I also have a water bottle holder. So here, I take my second water bottle, a smaller one like a smart water bottle, and put it in here. And that is a perfect size and keeps a smaller water bottle so I can get snacks and water throughout the day without taking my pack on and off. As I mentioned, on the front of my pack, I had my headlamp, and I realized that I had was charging it at the time. So this is a Nitecore U25. There's so many headlamps out on the market. I'm not recommending one or the other. This one just happens to work for me because it's rechargeable. But as part of backpacking essentials, you have to have some sort of light source at night, because you don't want to be working, putting up your tent or dealing with things at night without some kind of artificial light source. I simply use a headlamp. Some people use flashlights. Some people use lights in their tent. And I think it's essential to have some sort of light source on your pack. I think it would be crazy for me not to talk about clothing when talking about backpacking essentials. One thing that I need to talk about is shoes. You have to have some sort of comfortable shoe out there for backpacking. I use a trail running shoe. These are not waterproof. I don't particularly like waterproof shoes. I just find that they absorb water on the inside and they remain heavy the rest of the day if you get water in them or over the top. But a lot of people like waterproof shoes. That's a particular personal choice. This is what I like because they are super light. I use the Ultras because the Ultra Olympus are super thick on the stack. They have a comfortable stack on them, and so it really is comfortable for me on the trail. I think it's important to talk a little bit about layering. Backpacking essentials is all about layering for clothing. I have this thermal layer that's a mid layer that I use a lot. Depending on the weather, I may take only this because it's really warm. It's a Patagonia R1, but it is important that you layer from the bottom to the top. On the bottom, you take leggings and then pants if it's going to be really cold. On the top, you layer 1, 2, 3, and then have some sort of layering like a down jacket, and then maybe a fleece, and then some sort of dry wicking shirt underneath. But, you know, that's all up to you, and that's all your personal decision about how you layer. But as it gets cold, I think it's important to layer up and layer down with your clothing. Socks are very important. I use a Darn Tough sock, and I also use the Injinji toe socks because I found that that particular layering really helps with reducing the amount of blisters that I get on a backpacking trip. But socks are really important. Don't let anybody tell you that socks are not important for a backpacking trip. It really starts with your base. What hits the ground first is your shoes and your socks. So your feet are very important. From there up, then you get into your backpacking. Well, guys, I think this will conclude part 1 of the idea of essentials for backpacking. I've covered a lot of things. You know what? I probably missed a lot of things too, because I think it is 11:15 at night. I'm heading on a trip to early tomorrow morning, and I thought I would just stop as I was getting everything together and talk about these things. But tell me some of the things I missed in part one. That is the essentials of backpacking and the items that you take. You know, everything else in part two is going to be dealing with the trail, the planning of the trip, the camp, different ideas of backpacking. I'll talk about essentials there. That'll be on the trip. For now, let's conclude part one of this series of backpacking by saying these are the essentials of backpacking as I see them at 11:15 at night. Thanks for watching this episode of As the Crow Flies Hiking. I'll see you on part two, where we'll talk about the essentials of backpacking as you're on the trail.